Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everyone, welcome to our 4th Podiversary episode. 4 years. 4 years. Wow. What a time. It truly doesn't feel like that. No. Like, I know we've been doing, obviously, a lot of episodes and a lot of work, but it feels like it's maybe been a year. Yeah, maybe 2. And then I'm like doing the math and I'm like, that's not right. And I'm like, no, it's right. It's right. It's just, what is time? On my timeline pictures on Facebook and stuff, it's been coming up this week. Oh. Like when we were hinting towards having the podcast together. Yeah. And I was like, that was so long ago. Babies. It feels like that though. Compared to now. Yes. We're on our 4th Podiversary. What have we done every year? And hopefully every other year, we take listener stories. So today we're playing or reading other people's stories that they've sent in. One day, Amanda and I will remember to tell people they can send these to us all year. This was not that year. Maybe next year. This is that day, though, that you can tell people. Oh, yeah. You can send us them anytime. So if you have something weird that happens in February, send it. Because either one, if there's a content episode where it makes sense to fit it in, like Liz's Grinning Man story, or if we have this way, your story's already in. And when we decide to do whatever little fun thing we decide to do in relation to Podiversary stories, like a sticker or raffle entries, then you're just already in. Yeah. Future you is going to be like, ooh, perhaps I'm going to get a fun sticker or an entry for a prize or something else. Do you have a favorite all-time episode? Favorite episode. So, like, obviously, my favorite thing is ghosts. Right. So I love when we talk about haunted places and hauntings. Those are probably my favorite ones. I don't know if I have a favorite episode, but my favorite ones to record are like the haunted dolls or like the weird urban legends where we're like cryptids cackling for 90 minutes. Yeah, those are fun. I do like those. What about you? It depends. My favorite episode to edit, things where you and I are very stoic. Yes. Because we don't have to watch for laughter. My favorite thing to research, conspiracies, which means that our second episode, Black Forest, is still one of my favorite things that we've researched because it was such a fun fucking time. But I do like our silly, funny episodes. And I am a big fan of the topic and a bunch of things. So like when we did like snakes and we did mythology and superstitions and paranormal stuff and a cryptid and murders and all the things. So we cover like a little bit of everything. Yeah. But maybe sea monsters. It's only because you wanted to include the Basilosaurus. Oh, yeah. That's it. That was it. That's definitely it. You're so right. Yeah. It's secretly her favorite. Yeah. He is the lemon of the sea. But you love him. Boy, do I. Boy, do I. I love our sticker. Was it last year's sticker? I think so. Yeah. The Pro Basilosaurus one, and it was like the banana one. Yeah. But it was like you gave him lashes. Yes. Amazing. Stunning. I love it. Well, speaking of things that we love, one of our patrons gave our first story today. Their name's Jeanette, and we're going to play their story now.
Hi, Amanda and Lindsay. This is the story of my one big paranormal experience. I have a theory that it may have knocked all of the psychic right out of me, and I would love to hear if you think that might be the case. This was back when I was 3 years old, and my family lived in a very tiny, very 80s style townhome. The layout is important for lines of sight here, so let me describe it for you. The main room was the living room in the front, with a big plush white couch and this big solid block of a coffee table that was made out of gray Formica. The dining room was straight to the back of the house as the other half of this main room, and to the left of the dining room was the kitchen, making the whole first floor an L shape of square rooms. Most importantly, you couldn't see into the kitchen, which is where my mom was that day. from the living room, which is where my dumb toddler ass was, jumping up and down on that big squishy couch. I somehow managed to jump and do a full flip forward, cracking the back of my little toddler skull into the sharp edge of that chic gray Formica coffee table. And in that moment, I remember being knocked out of my body. And then I was standing in the dining room, looking at my body, lying between the couch and the coffee table. I then look over to the side of me at my poor pregnant mom in the kitchen, who dropped whatever she was doing to respond to the noise of my fall and comes out into the dining room to see what trouble I was causing. And as soon as she sees me there, she lets out the most heart-wrenching scream I can ever remember hearing and sprints over to pick up my totally limp little self. And I think that's what snapped me back into my body, because the next thing I remember is getting loaded into the ambulance. I ended up having more than a dozen stitches and no long-lasting effects from this misadventure. Although, like I said earlier, this is the only paranormal thing I'm sure has ever happened to me. Some little incidents here and there that are kind of maybes. I sometimes wonder, like I said earlier, if this incident knocked all of the psychic or spooky senses out of me. Or maybe that I even left a little ghostly shadow of me in that townhome that might still be there to this day. Who knows?
She is such a good storyteller and like so descriptive. Like I feel like I was there.
Yeah, I also feel like I was there. Well done, Jeanette. A beautifully told story.
So good.
I love the way that she describes her toddler self.
Dumb toddler ass. Yeah, I laughed.
Well, first off, I'm glad that you're okay.
Yeah.
Presumably several years after you were a toddler. I have no idea how old you are now, so presumably it's been a long time. But that, your poor mother was probably fucking terrified. Like, could you imagine like the sound that would make? Oh, the sound, like,
yep,
it makes my teeth hurt. Like the way, you know, when you chew tinfoil, that's what thinking of that sound makes me think of. Ugh.
Yeah, it's not good. Ollie's done something not quite that bad, but similar.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was knocking the psychic out, but I think that you had perhaps a near-death experience. Like, I don't know if it was quite that bad or, you know, what happened exactly, medically, of course. But I've seen stories of this where people have almost died, or they've been under anesthesia even, where they've been able to watch themselves and see the surrounding area and even walk around at times. And her being able to like watch her mom and like all of that.
Normally, when people have a near-death experience, they experience more paranormal things after that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you would feel the opposite. I'm a big believer in everybody having some degree of the ability to have other things and being able to sense things. I don't think it's something where you could knock it out, but I would say that you said that this was the most like concrete example you had of like paranormal type of things happening or spooky things happening.
Right.
And that was an incredibly traumatic experience for anyone, but especially a baby, like a toddler. So I would be shocked if somewhere in your core goo subconscious, your brain did not pair pain, terrifying, being able to do something more than you think that you should be able to do.
Negative feelings.
Yes, you would have like a negative attachment to that. So like overall, a negative experience because you cracked your skull, but like you lived and you were fine, obviously. But in the moment, it was like psychic thing with horrifying event. Perhaps your brain's like, that's not a safe place I can go.
Subconsciously, without even thinking, was like, that's a no-no, never again.
Yeah. One of the things that you didn't mention was how scared you were.
Yeah.
Or how like upset you were. Or that you woke up and it was really painful. You're like, oh, I didn't have any lasting damage. But being a toddler and like you can't control anything in your surroundings already, but then you also have an injury. And then your mom is presumably like a little bit more panicked around you generally. I don't think it knocked the psychic out of you. I think it scared it away for a bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's also really similar to when kids see things that adults think are not there and downplay it so much that they're like, oh, okay, Like, I learn as I'm growing that that's not really a thing that everyone is welcoming of.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like the fear and that kind of put together and then it
Yes.
stopped. But that doesn't mean that it's gone forever, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think it's gone forever. I would think it's just a part you would need to purposely reawaken and maybe be as gentle as possible with your inner child of being like, it is safe to like explore this realm. Like exploring this realm doesn't always mean that I've cracked my skull.
Right. Yeah. Please don't get hurt.
Yeah, don't do anything so that it happens. Not that I think you would, but I think that being in a calm space where you're inviting it versus it being thrust upon you are very different.
Agreed.
And that letting yourself approach it slowly might be more helpful.
Yeah.
You also said, like, I wonder if like there's like a ghost or something of me in that townhouse. So I could absolutely see there being an energy imprint of that situation.
Uh-huh.
If you're a believer in like things kind of like running on an autopilot kind of thing.
Circling. Mm-hmm.
That would be interesting to know if the people who live there ever hear like a big bang in that room or ever hear like
a scream,
a child crying, because presumably there was some type of like scream that came out of you, even if it was brief.
And her mom.
Whew, I have chills.
What a good story, though. Thank you for sharing.
Excellent story. Thank you for sharing, Jeanette. A great one for us to start off with. So our next story is from Jeremy, and he said, my uncle Billy Glenn died before I was born. I get my middle name from him. Several people in the family have seen him over the years. My first time was the Halloween after I adopted my boys. It wasn't out of the corner of my eye. I turned and looked in his eyes, a white figure that smiled and faded away. I didn't feel scared or anything other than love, like he was just dropping in to see how things were going.
I love that.
I really do love like a ghostly relative just popping in being like, how are you? Great. Goodbye.
Yeah. And you feel good. You're not scared. You're just like,
yeah.
Oh, I recognize who this is.
Yes.
And I feel good about it. Not scared. Yeah, those stories always get me.
Well, it gets me when they're children, but especially as adults. I'm glad that like his family had also experienced it. So he wasn't like the first adult who was like, hey, I saw Uncle Billy Glenn. What's up?
Yeah.
You know, especially if you've never met him, it would feel hard to believe that about yourself, but what a lovely experience.
Yeah, I like that he popped in and visits everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Uncle Billy Glenn, and thanks, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you for that story. So the next story we have is from Elizabeth. And so this one's a little bit longer, but I love it. So mine started when I was around 5 or 6. My mom had just remarried a few years prior, and we had moved into a 200-year-old farmhouse a few miles out of a super small town in Kentucky. The house was pretty small and had additions built in the past. But it was all in all a simple, boring house. So around the time I'm 5 or 6, my stepdad decides that he's going to start renovating the bathroom. This house at the time only had one bathroom, and he was super slow with every project that he started. So we had a few weeks where we had no access to our bathroom at all. Luckily, a few hundred yards from the house, we had a classic old-timey outhouse. Like, super authentic, little wooden outhouse complete with the crescent moon on the door. And if I remember correctly, I think it was a 2-seater.
Oh.
Anyways, I've never heard of that. That's bizarre. It was gross and I hated using it, but I mean, it's all we had for a while, so there was no way around it. Okay, so one night it's like, I don't even know how late, but it's in the summer and it's dark and I'm supposed to be in bed, but I had to use the bathroom and I couldn't sleep. Note that I was very, very quiet. I was an independent child from a very young age, and I seriously didn't talk to anyone unless I had to. So instead of getting my mom or older sister up, I just got a flashlight and headed out the door out to the outhouse. So I walked down a little creeped out because it's really dark, and it was kind of a long walk, but I did my business and started back towards the house. As I was walking back, my flashlight was shining sideways towards a big oak tree that was right across from my and my sister's bedroom window. I thought I saw someone standing near the tree. I stopped and pointed around the tree, and there is a lady standing there. I didn't recognize her at all, but she looked kind of odd. She didn't have much color in her at all. Her hair, her clothes, and even her skin were all a dull gray tone. Her hair was wild, sticking out everywhere, like it hadn't been brushed in a while. There were even bits of leaves and twigs sticking out of it. The visualization of that. Ugh.
Yeah, it's such a specific image that it's giving buried alive.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
In a terrifying way, especially with like as a younger person, like what, 5 or 6, we're not thinking like this is what someone looks like when they're buried alive, but as an adult, you can appreciate that little you picked up on a lot of detail. They were like, something's not right.
Yeah.
I mean, other than there being a lady out here and that lady being a perhaps ghost.
Right. Her clothes didn't look right. They looked very old. This was in the mid-90s, and she definitely looked outdated. I think at the time, I thought pioneer clothes. But she just stood there looking very sad. I froze for a minute because this was a lot to take in, and I remember it so vividly, it's insane. And it sounds insane. But keep up with me because it's gonna get weirder.
Love this.
Love it. So, I'm looking at her, and she isn't really looking at me. She doesn't even seem to notice me, which is strange because I'm standing there pointing a fucking flashlight at her. But anyways, I keep my eyes on her and slowly move towards the house.
You've seen the TikToks where they're like, what would send like a 17th century like child from England into a coma? I feel like flashlights would be very jarring to a pioneer woman. Presuming that they were a person who died in pioneer times, not like in the recent like decade where they had pioneer clothing at Target for a long time when it was like, do you want to look like you belong in a prairie? Like you're an actual person from pioneer times.
Gothic little house on the prairie was my favorite line.
But it wasn't gothic. It was just like weird, tight floral patterns in colors that aren't flattering on anyone.
Oh no. I have the black dresses that went kind of viral.
Oh yeah, that look like Wednesday Adam things. Like that's different though.
Kind of, yeah, but it was like Little House on the Prairie gone goth. I loved it.
Yeah, that's different than the sad prairie look they had. That was not great. Anyway, so sorry. Back to your story. The woman is not worried about the flashlight at all. Not sure she's ghost or human.
Okay, so back to the story. She never once moved or even looked my way. She just stared off in the direction of the front yard. Once she was out of my sight, I booked it into the house and into my bed and blanket over the head for the rest of the night. I don't know how I went to sleep, but I did.
That's incredibly relatable.
Oh, yeah.
Where else would you be safer than in that exact situation?
Right. They can't go near you if you're under the covers.
It's ghost law.
It is.
I would say as a person who had a ghost like pull a blanket down, but neither here nor there. My point is just that like at 5 or 6, you're like, I'm in my panic room. I'm golden.
Yeah. So I shit you not, I didn't tell my mom about this, or my sister, or my best friend. Basically, I had decided I was dreaming or something, and it didn't really happen. I know that sounds like shit because of how young I was, but I'm telling you, I was a weird kid and seriously disclosed hardly anything to anyone. I love that. We were all weird kids. We've all found each other.
Yeah, I like that Elizabeth was like, as a child, like a tiny child was like, come back with a warrant if you want to know, like just tight-lipped as hell. Amazing. Unless it was from trauma, then not amazing.
Right. A couple of months and nothing strange had happened again until I started seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye. It always happened towards the front of the house, in between the front door, foyer, and bathroom. The living room was right in from the foyer, which led to my bedroom, so I could see the area from my room. So I kept seeing just something out of the corner of my eye that looked like it was going across the doorway from the front door to the bathroom. Finally, one day I was sitting in my room reading a book when I looked up and that same lady was standing there in the doorway just staring at me. Like, just staring a hole through me. Ugh. I just looked back at her and looked around to see if anyone else was around to see her. I don't remember if I saw anyone else, but I just watched her until she turned to walk to the front door and then she was gone. I was super confused, but still, I wasn't sure if it was real or not. I just didn't say anything about it to anyone. Which, like, that's a hard conversation to have, right?
It is. From the description, she sounds mildly solid. So it's like, what if there's just some woman of the woods that's like about?
Ugh, no thank you. It went on like this for a while. I would just see her standing there. I got to where it was mundane. I was so used to seeing her there looking at me that it wasn't a big deal to me anymore. I guess if you've come to stare, just come and stare. I'm going to read my book.
I just like have this idea of like this person at 5 or 6 just being like, do you want to take a picture? Like just very hardened, no nonsense.
Yeah.
Very serious.
This was literally like an entire year. And then all at once, I never saw her again. Longest year ever.
She hasn't said this. In my head, she's annoyed. I love the idea of like a 5 or 6-year-old being like, I cannot be bothered to deal with this ghost. Again, that's not how it's written, but in my head, that is the attitude is like, ugh, you again, doing this again.
So, happens for an entire year, then all of a sudden doesn't see her again. This too made me think that I had just imagined the entire thing, and eventually I forgot about it. When I was maybe 14 or 15, my older stepsister and I were talking about ghost stories. And she started talking about when she was little, maybe 4 or 5, she used to see a ghost lady that walked around outside around the oak tree.
Everyone just got chills, including myself.
Yeah. She described her the best she could remember, and I shit you not, she described the exact lady I had seen. This literally sent chills down my spine. This was the first time I told anyone about what I had seen, and she freaked out because she had honestly thought she had imagined it too. And her mom had told her that she was just seeing things.
Oh.
Fast forward to when I'm maybe 21, and I'm talking to my younger sister, who's about 17 at the time and about to leave home for college. She's spending the night at my house, and we're talking, and I make a joke about her finally leaving the haunted house. She's like, oh my God, for real haunted? I still get creepy vibes from the foyer. And I'm like, what? Because I had never talked to her about that. And she started talking about that when she was young, maybe 5 or 6, that she saw a strange gray lady in the foyer, and our mom told her that she was just imagining things. Too weird and too coincidental, since we had never spoken of this before. I asked her if our older sister had said anything to her, and she hadn't either. So all 3 of them are having experiences and not talking to each other about it until years later. Fast forward a few more years, I'm back at the farmhouse visiting my mom when she starts telling me about nightmares my little brother had been having. He has always been extremely easily influenced by any kind of spooky movie or story. And so since he was little, we all made sure to never say anything of the sort around him because he had such a wild imagination and would end up having nightmares. Fair. Same way with Ollie. He's almost 14 now, and he was around 6 years old at this time when my mom was telling me about his nightmares that he had been having. He had been coming in her room in the middle of the night crying. She said that he said he kept being woken up by a gray lady in his room. He had my old bedroom at the time.
Oh no.
Ugh. And still like the same age range each time too gets me. He would say that the gray lady had old, dirty clothes on. She had dirty leaves in her hair, and she was standing at the foot of his bed pointing at him.
Oh.
No, thank you. And he had this reoccurring nightmare regularly for about a year. I then discovered that none of us had told her, or my brother, of course, about our experiences. I sat her down and told her everything, and we were both majorly freaked out.
Her poor mother must have been like, okay, I've had several children that I've raised in this house, all of which were haunted by this woman, but like finds out when it's presumably like too late to do anything. Like years after the fact, like they all went through the haunting.
Well, she just needed more kids between the ages of 5 and 6 to bring into the home.
Procure some 5 to 6-year-olds.
Yeah, procure some kids somehow.
I mean,
and yeah, there's cousins, there's grandkids, like there's things that happen. There's kids somewhere.
Yeah, bring them on in.
A little bit more of the story. My mom has since divorced and moved out of that house, but we tried finding any history on it with no luck. To this day, though, my little sister's dad, who still lives in the house, swears a ghost lives around the foyer and says that he's seen shadows more than once. That's my creepy story, and I'm sorry if it was so long, but it's just so involved. I loved it.
I love it. Never too long. Never too long of a story. If it was a full episode length, though, we would probably be like, perhaps we'll have you on to tell it rather than us reading it. But no, never too long.
No, it was good. I know that there's a few sites, too, like House Creep. You can put the address in, I believe, and put what you've seen. And then if anyone's ever lived there before, maybe they would add to it. And just try, yeah, I mean, it's hard, especially for old houses, to try to find the history on it. But collectively, people at least might be able to talk about their experiences.
Yeah, I would say that by the time this episode is out, we'll have already emailed Elizabeth to say, like, do you mind giving us more information? Because I would be curious if they searched around the area. If this was a woman who died in, like, the woods or the land where the property was that predated it, perhaps you wouldn't find there.
Or the oak tree.
Yeah, or the oak tree. Or like typically in most jurisdictions, you'll find very aged land records, and you can look at the different like plat owners. Even if you don't necessarily have plats or street names, the way that they parcel out land will sometimes have the name of it. Or it'll be like the Smith's Woods or something like that. So you can find people who are in the area. But I'd be intrigued to do research with Elizabeth, is what I'm saying here, because I'm curious.
Right? Or if someone disappeared in that area and wasn't seen again.
Yes.
Ugh.
It may not have been in the house itself. It could have been someone in the area, and you're the closest house. So she's like coming into the house for help.
Yeah.
You know, like, because she's just going into the foyer. And if you think like you are running in off the street for help from someone, you might not go screaming through their entire house. You might just come into the foyer and, you know, stare at their small children.
I don't understand the pointing, though.
I would be curious about what was on the wall, because maybe it wasn't the oak tree or the house or the property that was haunted. Maybe it's a haunted painting. And she's like, that's me, you know, or that was mine.
Interesting. I love it.
Yeah, I've got 1,000 questions about this in the best way.
Yes. Yes. I'd love to research more.
Yes. Okay, so our next story is from Justin from Rogue Investigations, and Amanda actually knows him.
I'm actually going to go on an investigation with them at the beginning of next month.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, so this is Justin's story. This is about my scariest encounter I've had while investigating any location. This was at the Lizzie Borden B&B. My team and I went there to investigate the reported haunting of the buildings and to confirm the activity that is in the house. It is rumored that the mother and father still roam the halls looking for a reason as to why they were killed by their own daughter in such a gruesome way. So we get to the location and set up our equipment in the hallways, parents' room, the main corridor coming into the house, and the stairs. We had 12 trap cameras, 14 IR cameras, REM pods, etc. all deployed in the areas we were told there had been reported footsteps, shadow figures, screaming, and knocking on the walls. We set up all of our equipment, and through the night, we're doing sweeps of the rooms, and my team and I are in each room conducting EVP recordings and sweeping for disturbances on the K2. During the investigation, we heard a knocking and footsteps coming from the entrance of the parents' room. All 10 of us converged in the room and conducted an EVP session inside of the room. During the session, we asked the typical questions. Who's with us? Why are you here? Do you know you've passed on? What holds you here? Can you tell us your name? 2 of the questions were intelligently answered. Who was with us came back with an answer of Lizzie and hiding. Why are you here came back with justice and not fair. That feels pretty intelligent.
Yeah.
After these responses, my team and I thought it would be an interesting experiment to conduct an EVP session with someone laying in the parents' bed. I took the bait and decided to lay in the bed while the EVP session was going on. While laying in the bed, I asked, who's with us? And the recorder during live playback said, Lizzie. Pushing further from that answer, I then asked, are you the one making all the noise up here? I then played back the recorder, and to my question, I gotta get out. At this point, I decided to tell the rest of the team to leave and that I would conduct the rest of the experiment and session by myself. It's rumored that Lizzie loved to be alone and loved to play pranks on people who would stay at the house. I started to record again, and no sooner than I hit the record button than I heard a huge bang at the door. I asked, is that someone trying to scare me away? Then I heard footsteps walking around the bed. Staying as calm as I could, I decided to turn on the K2 and sweep the surrounding area of the bed. As soon as I turned on the K2, I heard a loud banging at the door. When I turned off the K2, the banging stopped. Don't love that.
Nope.
It was at this time that I decided to lay back down in the bed and to conduct another EVP session, but this time to have the team monitor the cameras we had set up around the bedpost. I turned on the recording and laid down the bed and then started my session. Keep in mind this was around 2:30 a.m. During my session, I asked, why are you here? What holds you here? Do you understand what you did? Are you trapped here? And the questions that I would expect to trigger the hauntings. As soon as I asked these questions, I feel a huge uneasy feeling in the room. I decided to push a little further and asked, do you want to hurt anyone in this house now? I then felt someone else lay in the bed right beside me. I played the recorder, and as I was laying there, and in a live playback, the answer to the question of, do you want to hurt anyone in the house now? I got a very clear, you.
Ugh.
No. So I then felt something that could be described as long fingers come over my shoulder and grab my shoulder. And then I heard a very clear hello in my ear.
Mm-mm.
After that, I jumped out of the bed, ran to the door and ran down the stairs and out of the house. Still to this day, this is one of the houses I would prefer not to go back to.
Yikes.
Always when we're talking ghost investigations, asking yourself the question of, am I proving it to me or am I proving what I saw to somebody else? And there's just some things that you cannot prove to someone else. So very, very reasonably, this would be such a starkly clear and like known experience for Justin in his head. Like just like, am I getting pushed by a ghost at Villisca?
Yeah.
I'm like, you just can't convince me otherwise. There's nothing that you can do that's going to tell me like, oh, you just imagined it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the things that people want to experience, if you're on a ghost investigation, what you want to experience is something recordable.
Yes.
Like you want a general experience, but if you're thinking of like ideal experiences, it's something that you can go, ah, look, that's when it happened. Not like ghost fingers and a hello in the ear.
Yeah.
Oh, creepy.
Mm-mm. And yeah, like I was chatting with him about this one and saying like our experience at Villisca, because it's not the same, but very like similar, where it's almost like aggressive and threatening and gives you that uneasy feeling.
Yes.
And the whole thing with Lizzie Borden is one of my favorite debates. Like I will get sucked into it every time I see something about it.
I will too, yeah.
And so just I would love to go there one day. And also to the house near their residence, because that one's supposed to be very spooky. I think it's a coffee house now.
I mean, Amanda, it generally is the Bridgewater Triangle. So, of course, I want to go there for so many reasons.
All right, we'll go to there.
Mm-hmm. We will. That'll be a place we can go to there.
Perfect.
Anyway, thank you so much for submitting your story, Justin. Very spooky, very creepy. Glad you experienced something because it's what you went there for, but not happy for you that it seemed terrifying.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Justin. Okay, so our next story is from Jamie. When I was 15, many, many, many years ago, my grandfather died. He was on a trip to Crete, sat down, had an aneurysm, and was gone. So sad.
Yeah.
Back in the day, there was no internet. Well, there was, but it was just for academics and scientists. I remember those days well.
Yeah.
Before each trip, our grandparents would have us over for dinner, and my sister and I would have to report on the research of where they were going. I love that. That's like such a cool project.
That's so cute.
So I knew all about Greece and Crete. The history, the sights they would see, how awesome their trip would be. The night Grandpa died, I dreamed he was sitting on my bed, rubbing my back like he did when I was a little girl. He told me, "Don't be sad, Jamie. I love you. I'll always be here with you. You'll be fine." Makes my heart so sad. Early the next morning, my dad came over crying. He told us Grandpa had died. I understood my dream. While my family was crying, I didn't. I knew Grandpa was watching over me. Oh, that one's hard to get through.
Oh, what a lovely story. And I'm glad that like in that moment, you had the peace of, no, he's with me, because losing somebody is already hard enough. But being able to be like, I don't think that they're like gone from my life, I'm sure felt very nice.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for sharing. That's a sad story, but I'm glad, like he was able to check in with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. So our next story is from Nadine from Get Ghosted Phoenix.
She is really awesome. She started a ghost tour in downtown Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually going to go on her tour in about a week, I think. But I'm stoked to see it. And she covers things like the San Carlos, which we've covered, and a few other really spooky spots. So if you are looking for something spooky to do, Get Ghosted Phoenix. You'll find them on Facebook and all social media, but super fun.
Love it. So this is Nadine's story. One of the most unforgettable and terrifying experiences I've had on my ghost tours happened at the Rawson house. I was leading a group of Girl Scouts one evening, and they were eagerly interacting with a spirit we call Speedy using an EMF detector and a spirit box. The girls were asking Speedy to show his presence when suddenly we all heard a knock at the door. Now, mind you, we were standing right in front of that very door and no one was inside. The knocking then grew louder, turning into an aggressive pounding. It got so intense that it sounded like someone on the other side was desperately trying to get out, rattling the door as if it was shaking on its hinges. This was around 9 p.m. and the museum had already closed for the night. Needless to say, we were all terrified. We stood there for a few minutes, hoping for more paranormal activity, but after the violent knocking, everything just went still. I managed to capture the whole event on video, and it ended up going viral on social media. The Rosenhaus staff chalked it up to an employee he supposedly loves playing tricks on guests, insisting the house isn't haunted, but it just felt really real to me. I just also feel like, is your employee Speedy? Like, is that, like, are you, like, officially, like, not lying? But, you know, anyway, back to Nadine's story. Another place where we get a lot of spirit activity is at St. Mary's Basilica, especially during Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, when the veil between the living and spirit world is thinnest and the energy there is palpable. One Halloween, we had an intense encounter with a spirit named Juan, who communicated with us clearly in Spanish. Since that night, Juan consistently comes through in the spirit box, along with others named Steve, Eduardo, and Jose. The fact that we can repeatedly connect with these spirits is fascinating and eerie. As I continue to add new spots to the tour, like the old sheriff's office built over a pioneer grave, a former jail, and even the train station, I'm excited to see what new paranormal activity awaits. I feel like a new chapter of haunted history is just beginning for my tour. Love that. Love that for you. I love all ghost tours, but most of the time in ghost tours, you're not really doing a ton of like investigation-y type of things. You're hearing stories.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that you're having everyday people having their own experiences, I think is a really fun time. Because I mean, especially like in Girl Scouts, when I was, you know, a Girl Scout, we went on ghost tours, especially in like Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
And they just like drove us around and talked about things. They weren't like, here is an EMF reader, let's go.
And the Rosenhaus has always given me creepy vibes. I know that they don't like to talk about it being creepy. They do, obviously it's a museum, and they're doing some history tours about seances of the time, like spiritualism soon, which looks really cool. But they don't like to associate with being haunted.
Yeah.
But every single time I've been outside that house, weird vibes that there's no reason, because it's like a busy area too of downtown Phoenix. Like there's restaurants nearby and like people are always wandering around.
Yeah.
And then there's this amazing looking house just in the middle of it. And it is very creepy to me. And I love that other people have had kind of spooky experiences there. Now, Nadine said it was okay if we shared her video as well.
Ooh, yeah.
And so that freaked me out. Of course, it could have been an employee, but I don't know why they would do that if they don't want to be associated with being haunted. Why they would scare a group of children.
The employee isn't the company, you know, like.
I guess. She sent us a very small clip, but I mean, something's moving.
Yeah.
And again, like when I was chatting with her, because she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, it could be an employee, but also, at least for me, if I was the employee, like scaring a group of people, afterwards, I would probably open and like wave, or like open one of the windows and wave.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a group of children screaming too, you know, like I would feel guilty about that. Not everyone would, but I would personally. So I don't know, but very bizarre.
I feel like even if you didn't pop out and you were the employee, it's not fucked up. It's just kind of like, don't make people think that they have real experiences when they're not, because then when real shit does happen, people don't believe it.
That's true. But I mean, I've always gotten weird vibes.
Mm-hmm.
So especially in that area, like by the front door,
Mm-hmm.
never have felt great standing right there. So I don't know.
Also, on that same vein of like, don't let people think you're having real experiences if you're not. We're going to do an episode on it later, not this year because we already have them all booked out. But I went to Pennhurst, and part of the introductory spiel they give you, they're like, do not fake evidence. Do not fake results. If we catch you doing this, we will ask you to leave.
Good.
Which I thought was great. I was like, fuck yeah. They're like, we don't want people to be skeptical and pick apart your thing and you be a liar and make us seem less credible. So don't do that. So I was like, oh, I like that they said it loudly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Nadine. I appreciate you sending the story, and I can't wait to take your tour.
Yes. Thank you, Nadine.
So the next story was sent by Misty, and she sent a short one and a longer one, but I am fascinated by both.
Love it.
So she said, I have two stories. The first one is about my sister and niece. My niece came up to my sister one day and said, hey, Mom, remember when we were best friends? My sister said something like, we are best friends. Then my niece said, no, like before I died.
Oh.
Ugh. My sister said, what? And my niece replied, I'm so glad I found you again.
I love the idea of finding your best friend in another life, but I cannot imagine how like unfucking nerving that would be.
Right? Yes. Agreed. It's scary and then also a little heartwarming. And when she sent the story, I had mentioned that I had read a lot about past lives and how when people are reborn again, sometimes it's so fast that they still have those memories as their children before they like fully disappear. And I'm wondering if maybe it had happened really fast. And fast is a relative term. Like it could have been before the mom even was born, you know, like it could have been her past life as well, but just interesting. Also, I had mentioned we did an episode about this a while back and gave her the name of the doctor who studies this so she could read more about it.
Love it.
Okay, so moving on to her second story. My second story is about my daughter when we lived in Germany about 11 years ago. She was 3 at the time. We lived in old World War II Nazi housing. It was the base where Hitler had launched the first missile of the war into Poland.
Fuck.
Ugh, heavy.
Yeah.
They were houses, but they were in apartment style, kind of stacked on top of one another. We moved into a 3-bedroom home. My daughter had a playroom and a bedroom. About a month in, my daughter started crying about a scary man in the window of her bedroom. Don't love that.
Mm-mm.
Since we were on the second floor, we just told her it was nothing. Like, how would that happen, right?
Yeah.
She refused to go back into her bedroom, so we ended up moving her playroom and bedroom around, so they switched them.
Yeah.
Then, in the new playroom, about a month later, she started playing with what she called her friend.
Oh, no.
I chalked it up to her just having an imaginary friend, but she also kept crying about the scary man in the window. A few months later, one of our friend's moms found out that we were actually living in what used to be a concentration camp where children were kept. Breaks my heart.
That is heartbreaking.
So when she sent the story, I was trying to understand how the base was, and if I understand it correctly, the base was kind of sprawled out a bit. So there was different sections of housing, just to paint the picture. So our friend's mom started researching the area because her dog was acting very strange in her home. And also, her cabinets would open and close in the middle of the night by themselves.
Now, would they open and close, or would they stay open or stay closed? Because I am haunting my own house, you know?
I believe they'd hear them moving, but I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, I don't like that.
So our friend's mom had lived in the newer area of the base. So after finding this information out, she told me to start asking more questions about the imaginary friend and the man. We asked my daughter about her friend's name. She then went into her room, had a 5-minute conversation with what seemed like herself, and then came back. When she came back, she said he told her he was not supposed to tell.
Dislike.
About a month later, she was having a tea party with her friend. So her daughter having a tea party. I had a family friend over at the time, and she asked my daughter about her friend and asked her to describe him. My daughter then said he was in blue and white striped pajamas and was very dirty.
Oh, no.
I know. Breaks my heart. Also, that he too was afraid of the man in the window, and that one of the scary men took him from his parents and brought him here. He then told her, I'm not supposed to be here. So, like, he wasn't supposed to be in their home.
Yeah.
This went on for about 8 months. My family ended up visiting Auschwitz since we were stationed nearby. Almost immediately, my daughter pointed to a picture and said, that's what the little boy was wearing. I got chills reading this. As we continued to look at the photos, she pointed at the Nazi pictures and said, that's what the scary man was wearing. We were told to sage our house and ask them to leave. But I wasn't really worried about the little boy because he seemed friendly. And that's like a tough decision, you know, because you're like, there's a kid and I don't want to harm the kid or scare the kid, but fuck the Nazis, right?
Yeah. Well, and also when you are cleansing your house, you can remove one, not the other, right? It's not an all or nothing situation.
That's true.
But also, if you don't know that, you're like,
yeah,
it's I'm cleaning or I'm not.
Exactly.
I didn't know that until 4 months ago, you know?
Yeah. But it seemed like they were friendly towards the little boy, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't really worried about her little girl playing with the little boy.
Yeah.
But a few months later, my friend was over and we both saw what looked like a World War II soldier in our living room. I would have not believed it, but my friend also saw it. The lights flickered and then he was gone. The next morning, my daughter came to me and said the little boy was saved by a soldier. The nice man came and saved him, and the scary man is now gone. She never talked about them again.
Okay, well, I have so many chills.
Mm-hmm.
That does make me think of the idea of energy imprints.
That's true.
but also like she interacted with him. You know, it wasn't as though it was just something she could see. It was like she was having conversations. So that's very interesting that it ended in that way.
Right. And I'm happy though. You don't really think about that where spirits do move on.
Yes. Yes.
And perhaps like another spirit helps them move on, or I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm glad that the boy was saved, or at least like the daughter somehow knows the boy was saved.
Yeah.
And the scary man's gone. Ugh. But yeah, hearing that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a good ending.
It gave me chills multiple times. But a very, very good story. And I love anything where kids are seeing stuff, or imaginary friends, or past lives. Like, those are some of my favorite types of stories. So when she had 2, I was stoked.
Yes. Well, and also, it wasn't like, it was also them that saw the World War II soldiers. So it kind of, not that you don't believe kids, but I feel like adults are more skeptical.
Yes.
So even when a kid says something, they're like, oh, you have an overactive imagination. They're like, no, this literally coincides with what we saw last night and didn't tell you about. And also, you know, like a little kid doesn't necessarily understand like who's going to be doing what in this time period, you know?
Right.
But yeah, thank you, Misty. Excellent stories. Much appreciated.
Yes, thank you.
Our next story is from Lexi. This is also a recording. We're going to play her story now.
Hey everyone, so I just wanted to share a quick story with you about a pretty scary incident I had in a parking lot in the middle of the day, of all places. But hopefully it helps y'all, you know, kind of know to keep more aware, even in the places that you just are at all of the time and think might be like perfectly safe, but creepy, scary things can still happen. I was at work and then I left to go on my lunch break. I went and got something to eat and came out to sit and eat it in my car because I am very introverted and like to use my lunch to kind of be quiet and recharge. So I always eat lunch in my car. But this place I went to eat was part of like, you know, like a busy strip mall, shopping center, picture that kind of thing. Rows and rows of cars. And this will be important to the story. I had pulled through in between 2 cars to the next like row over to be in my parking space. So there was no cars on either side of me. And I'm sitting here, you know, eating my lunch, probably scrolling on my phone. And this guy walks up to my window and like acts like he wants me to roll it down. And for those that don't know, I live in Georgia. It is hot 95% of the time. So I was really more annoyed than like creeped out, honestly, which was probably my first mistake. I did not roll the window down the whole way. I just like cracked it and I was just kind of like, what? And in my peripheral, I could see like another guy that was with him, not on my passenger side, like at the window, but like towards the front of my car, like kind of at the front corner. But this guy at my window was like, hey, I dropped my ring and I think it rolled under your car. Like, do you mind like reversing and like pulling in the space behind you so that I can look for it? And again, I'm trying to just like have my one bit of quiet for the day. And I'm just like, whatever. So I roll up the window, throw my car in reverse, back it up, park, go back to what I was doing. Again, because I went back to what I was doing, not paying attention. You know, I don't really think about this. I eat lunch in this parking lot all the time, not thinking about it at all. So I'm not even paying attention to what these guys are doing. But I do realize at some point that now that I've backed up, I am in between 2 cars. Like I'm sandwiched now. And so then, again, I couldn't tell you how long it was again later, that this guy, same guy, because he was with a friend, but it was the same guy that talked to me both times, comes up to my window again. Okay, what? I still can't find my ring. Can you get out and help me look for it? Is what he says to me. And now, like, the red flags are going off. I'm like, no. I roll up the window. My doors were already locked, but I hit the lock anyway, so it made the noise. That way, like, he knew that I knew that something sketchy was going on. And then at that point, too, I also picked up my phone, and I should, again, hindsight kind of thing, I should have just called the police, but I called my husband, and they see me pick up my phone and get on my phone, probably thinking that I am calling the cops. These guys take off, get in their car. Their car was the one on my passenger side. It wasn't the one to my immediate left. It was the one on my passenger side. And they get in their car, they start pulling away. No worries about this ring anymore, of course. And as they're pulling away, I'm taking pictures of them in their car because now I know something was wrong. And they are looking at me like, oh, kind of like, oh shit. But also I see that they don't have license plates. And again, it took me a minute to realize that I was sandwiched between two cars. So I think that they had me back up because then there was less space for me to go. And I was also sandwiched up against their car that they were trying to get me out of my car to probably get into. Again, this was the middle of the day on my lunch break, like in a busy shopping center, cars everywhere. And it was just very unnerving, very unsettling. I watched them leave the parking lot. I watched them turn like the opposite way of where I needed to go back to go to work, so I didn't have to worry about them following me or anything. But it was just very, very unsettling. And now every time I am in a parking lot, no matter how many times I've been to that store, restaurant, wherever, I am just constantly head on a swivel. Anybody tries to stop and talk to me, I'm just like, nope, like a little kid with stranger danger almost. But unfortunately, you just never know.
That is horrifying.
That is terrifying. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, Amanda and I are just like, oh, the whole time. And it's so interesting because it's so easy to say that in a situation when it's not you, like, oh, here's what I would have done. I would have been more aware. I would have figured this out sooner. But when it's you in the situation, you don't always assume, oh, this person has nefarious intent. Something bad is about to happen. You're just like, people are existing being people.
Yes.
And I'm glad that she was like, something's up now, and like was doing things that clearly got them to get the fuck away from her.
Agreed. Yeah. Parking lots have turned into a terrifying experience for a lot of women now.
Yes.
And a number of things happen, like what Lexi described. Like, unfortunately, I've seen that on like our neighborhood site about grocery stores and, whatever, especially around holiday season. So that's coming up. Be super aware.
Yeah.
But that, along with leaving something weird in the front of the car, so you have to grab it in order to drive. Never do that because there's crazy stories surrounding that one.
Yeah. And what Amanda means is like, if there's like a flyer on your windshield,
don't touch it.
Just get into your car. It'll go someplace. And even if it looks like it's a handwritten note, keep going. Just drive.
Yep. Especially if you don't see it on other cars too. Because I know,
yes,
I hate when they do that where like there's gym flyers on every single car and you're like, if I wanted to go to your establishment, I will go, like stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, weird notes and things, especially if it's blocking your windshield, or money is another one I've seen, because then you're like, oh, money. You go towards it and then it's like the perfect place because your door is usually like right there to grab you. We've talked about air tags being left on people's cars and like weird stuff with that. Parking lots are horrific nowadays and it sucks.
And I hate to say this, but you don't have to help everybody.
No.
Like, someone needs your help and you don't know them. You can just go ahead and say, no, you actually don't need my help. Good luck. Best of luck. I hope you have a great day. I will not be engaging in that. Feel free to not put anybody else's needs in front of yours, within reason. But like, strange man, you don't need my help finding your ring. You'll be fine. You don't need me.
Nope.
Many serial killers prey upon people's desire to be helpful in order to get their victims. It means that if you're a person who is inclined to be helpful, you have to actively like stop yourself.
Yes.
If you are a person who is helpful or is a people pleaser or anything like that, you are inclined to just give to others. And sometimes it sucks, but like, not only will people take advantage of you generally, but also in this horrific way where it can put you in danger. And you can just say to yourself, if they needed help and it was an emergency, they would call someone else.
Yeah.
They don't know you. Why would they think you would help them?
Yeah. Or especially in a parking lot, there's an establishment. They could go in there and ask for help from the people that work there. If there's an issue in the parking lot of some kind, there's police. There's other people more equipped to help.
Yes. And most importantly, listen to your gut.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your gut tells you something's not right. I want you to blindly listen to that.
Agreed.
No proof, no reason. I want you to go, you know what, self, I trust you, and move right on.
Agreed. And so, yeah, with holiday season coming up, a lot more people in parking lots, a lot easier to be behind a lot of big cars and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So just make sure, the tip that I was given that I'm like, I think about every single time I get in my car is the moment you sit down, you lock that door immediately.
Oh, I mean, I do it everywhere.
Yeah. But you'll sometimes you're looking at your phone to go, okay, where's the next place I have to go? Or checking a message or whatever. Always lock your car immediately the moment you're in. And it just sucks that we even have to say that. And especially, again, when you have kids too. Getting your kids in and out of the car is also a very scary situation sometimes, which shouldn't be. It's something that you just have to do. But just be hyper aware. If there are people around your car that aren't getting in their own car, they're just standing there or looking around strangely, don't go near your car.
Mm-mm.
Or if someone pulls up behind your car, like if you see a car kind of boxing you in, like Lexi's case in a way, don't go to it.
Yeah. No. Similarly, sometimes you have the gut instinct to go yell at that person because they're in your way. Stay in your car. Just stay in your car.
Yeah.
It is so incredibly easy to be so focused on what the next thing is because life is busy.
Yeah.
You have to get your directions. You want to put your music on when you get in the car. You're buckling in kids. You're putting things in the car. There's a lot of things happening. The most important thing when you are getting into your vehicle is for you, and if you are in charge of children, to get into the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
That is step one. No other steps need to happen between you exiting the place and getting into your car. So you don't need to look at your phone. You don't need to listen to music. You don't need to worry about your directions. All of that can happen when you're inside your car with the door locked. It does suck that it's a world that we're in, but I say this as a person who, me, myself, I'm okay, I'm going to this place. I need to get my directions ready because I want to make sure that I can just get in the car and go.
Yeah.
But I can do that once I'm in.
Yeah.
It just takes a second of not paying attention. I'm also an introvert, so I would rather have headphones in all the time. But I know that when I'm in between places, headphones are not where it's at. You have to make sure you're
hyper aware,
which fucking sucks.
It does.
Or we could all just be good people. That's an option. It's an option for us to not have shitbirds surrounding us, but
we wish.
Anyway.
But thank you, Lexi. We're very glad that you're safe.
Yes, we are glad you're safe, Lexi, and thank you for sharing your story. Again, very sad you were scared, but appreciative that you shared this experience so people can add new terrors to the list of horrors,
Well, it's a good conversation.
It's also our only non-ghost story today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'm glad it got the conversation started. So now hopefully everyone listening will be very aware when they're getting in their car.
They're like, Aunt Lindsay and Aunt Amanda told us about what to do on the way to the car and we're listening.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And use your car alarm if need be to get attention.
Mm-hmm.
We want to end on a high note.
Yes.
And this is it's a spooky story told with the cutest voice ever.
And this is the youngest listener story we've ever shared.
Yes. I'm so excited for it, though.
Me too. And so this is Elliott's story.
Hi, my name is Elliott Abbott, and I am 7 years old. My mom and I went to the haunted Low Hotel, and one night I woke up and I saw a black shadow man above my mom, and it looked like it had red eyes, and it was staring at my mom, and when my mom woke up, it was gone. And it was very scary. I asked my mom what to do. She said, don't think about it. But it was very hard not to think about it. So that's all my stories.
Elliott, so beautifully told. Well done. I also agree. It would be hard for me to not think about that too.
Agreed.
I would be very scared. Also, if the Low Hotel sounds familiar, that's in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is the home of Mothman. So the first sightings and the festival.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had Elliott's mom, Liz, in our Grinning Man episode with what they experienced last year. So it's interesting that generationally they are experiencing things in that hotel.
Yeah, and how scary, to see it over your mom.
Yes. I don't have children, so I haven't had ghost concerns.
Oh, yeah, it's a concern.
From my niece and nephew. The other day we were at afternoon tea and my niece looks at me dead in my eyes. And with her full chest, she looks at me and says, Aunt Lindsay, what is true love?
You told me about that and I died.
And I mean, I spun for a minute because I didn't know how to answer that. I think that she's got it from Frozen, you know, because through those gifts. But my point is, that's the hardest question I've gotten, not what do I do about the scary shadow man with red eyes? You know, like that seems like a way harder question.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Especially if you're like, I'm going to be the one who like tucks you into bed and I don't want you to be scared forever.
Yes. Agreed. Ugh. Well, thank you, Elliott. That is a very scary story.
Yes.
But I'm glad that both of you are okay.
Yes, me too. And again, yes, thank you, Elliott.
Speaking of kid stories, my son now at my mom's house, who we've talked about her house before, very haunted, very spooky. We've never told him that it was. We're just like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Well, last year when I went to When We Were Young, she was watching him. And he has a back bedroom, which is away from the scary stuff. It's like the furthest bedroom away from scary stuff. And he goes up to my mom and he's like, there's a ghost in there. And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, I couldn't understand what they were saying, though. I think they might be speaking Spanish. And my mom's like, okay.
Casually. Like, I love how, like, just calm he sounds. Like, good. First off, good job, Amanda. That he's like, oh, there's a ghost and I'm not bilingual. Can we get a translator up in here, please?
Yeah. So, of course, my mom goes in there and she's like, I don't see anything. And he's like, well, I don't want to play in here anymore. Can you bring my toys to the living room? And she's like, sure, of course.
Such an adult.
So now when he goes to her house, he's always like, can you go get this bin of toys? Because I don't want to go back there. The ghost is there. So fast forward to that evening. She's trying to put him to bed. He's like, I don't want to sleep in there. The ghost is in there. She's like, okay, that's fine. There's other bedrooms you can choose from. And he's like, I just want to be in the living room. She tucks him in, locks all the doors. Everything's fine. She goes to her room, goes to sleep. Well, she calls me the next morning and she's like, I'm going to start with everything is fine, but we had a night. And I was like, okay, what happened? And she's like, I lost him last night. I got up at like 2 a.m. to get a drink of water and just to check on him because he's in the living room. They have a pool. They're very like she makes sure everything's locked up and hyper aware. But she's like, I went to check on him on the couch and he wasn't there. And I was like, okay. And she's like, so I ran around. It's a big house, lots of rooms. She's running around every room, every guest room. Nothing. No Ollie. And so she's freaking out. She's like, I was getting ready to call the police. I checked the pool. Like I checked everything because I was terrified. And I'm like crying, running around. And all of a sudden I see movement under my bed. My dog's on my bed. And I look under my bed and Oliver's sleeping under my bed because he got scared and he didn't want to wake me up.
Well, let me just put this out there. That is the most terrifying response. I hope you were like, Ollie, don't sleep under people's beds if you get scared. That's a bad plan.
Well, yes.
Because also, like, I'm just going to tell you, if I wake up in the middle of the night and something touches my little feeties, I'm going to fucking kick. Right? Like, and I'm not going to mean to. I'm just going to be in a state of panic. But your poor mom was probably like, like when she said we had a night, she's like, I had a night. I had a night, not Ollie.
Yeah. She was like, I was crying.
I had a night. I'm also like, I'm wondering at what part in the night did it click in his head that whatever he saw theoretically is not stuck in that room, right? That like,
yeah,
like just like he and his toys and his grandmother could leave that room and come into the living room, so could the ghost.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I guess he wanted to get in bed, but there wasn't enough room and he didn't want to wake her up. So because we had a full discussion about not sleeping under people's beds, but, and if you get scared, it's okay to wake people up.
On list of things. Yeah. On list of things you never thought you'd have a conversation about.
Yeah. I didn't think I had to bring that up. I thought that was a given, but you know, so yeah, the ghost in his room at her house is scary and sometimes walks around at night and he has to go hide. I felt so bad. So that's an ongoing thing anytime he's there now, is he has to sleep in a different room. He won't go back in his playroom. I think there's multiple things. There's one that's in the living room that luckily hasn't bothered him. There's one that lived where my room used to be, like in that hallway area. I think I've talked about it one of the Podiversary episodes. And now apparently in the back room, there is another one.
What a treat. What a treat. Just a little smorgasbord of ghosts. Okay, so Amanda, we were rounding out our Podiversary episode. We were almost done. For the 2023-2024 podcast year, do you have any scary stories that you haven't told yet?
Any scary stories I haven't told yet?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm probably forgetting some, but I think I've told everything as we went through a lot of the subjects and places and, you know, weird feelings that I've had in various places. What about you?
So I know I told you about this. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast, but I mentioned Pennhurst. We'll talk about it when we talk about it. But before we went there, it was a impromptu trip, so there wasn't a lot of ghost tool time because Amanda has ghost tools. I have like flashlights. And so I was looking at the Necrophonic app, which we talked about in our Velisca episode, and I was telling my husband about it, and he downloaded it on his phone. And we have talked before about the ghosts in our house being Marge and knowing Marge and us being comfortable with Marge.
Yep.
Ben and I have a strict no Ouija board rule. And we mean it. Like, we mean it fully, right? No Ouija boards. We're not talking to things. And we have a no haunted doll policy. And it's no haunted dolls, but it's also, like, things that seem like they might be haunted just don't come into the house. Like, if he was like, I found this insert, like, old rock that is supposed to be haunted, wouldn't come into the house because neither one of us want to bring anything in. For lots of reasons, but most importantly, because sometimes they mess with animals, and we don't ever want to do that.
That's fair.
So, us, as a no spirit communication couple, are like, let's open the Necrophonic app. We don't even fucking pause to think. We just do it, which is weird for us. And so throughout the session, it called him a bitch at one point, and then it said his name, Ben's name, very clearly. I don't remember all of it off the top of my head, but it was very clear, and it seemed like there were two different voices, which we were not pleased to hear about. And so we made the decision, never again. Never a fucking again, because we were just like, we have the idea in our head that Marge is here.
Yeah.
Maybe more. And that we have good ghosts. And I've done like energy cleansings and such to the house for things that are looking to harm us. So I feel safe in that regard. Probably time for another one just for time's sake. But it was interesting. And we were like, oh, we don't do this again. This is a no. This is a hard fucking no.
It like draws you in though when you're like, oh, there's this tool, super easy to use. Because that's the first thing I did when I got home from Velisca. And I was like, let's play with this. Luckily, it was all gibberish nonsense because I think this house is fine.
But the difference is that you have a Ouija board house. Your literal house is all but made of Ouija boards. You know, like people have a gingerbread house, you have a Ouija board house.
Yeah.
You have like every type of object in Ouija form that could be is. I would also wonder if you counted them up, if you would have some type of record. You might have some type of record. How funny would that be if you could get like a little like plaque?
Ooh, yeah. I did share that I just got the Ouija board earrings. They're so little and cute.
They're very cute. They are teeny.
But you can't communicate through these.
The next time you come here, we'll have to go to the spirit board thing.
I know. I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe you could communicate with bugs.
I barely can even see that it is a Ouija board. They're like little studs.
I'm going to make a joke, and if you don't get it, I'm going to flip my table and quit the podcast. Okay, are you ready?
Oh, there's a big % chance.
What is that, a Ouija board for ants?
Okay, I got that one. I've seen that movie.
Yeah, because it came out like 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, it was like immediate. Like when I saw it, I was like, well, like just now. Because you had sent me a picture, but I didn't get the scale size, you know?
Yeah.
But Zoolander, baby. Zoolander.
I do want an antique Ouija board really badly, but I don't have any like that. A lot of mine are like trays, and I have a big stone one.
Why do you want an antique Ouija board?
I don't know. I just want it. It wants to haunt me. Amanda just
has a hankering for hauntings.
I guess so.
I like to experience it outside of my house, but I want to be able to sleep.
Yeah. I don't know.
Amanda's not a huge fan of sleep, though.
I just have a tie with Ouija boards. I don't know why. I like them.
Interesting. I love it. Well, anyway, those are our stories.
I love them all. Thank you all so much for sharing.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. And also, thank you for listening to us for one episode or 4 years, wherever you fall.
If you got here, it counts as 4 years to me.
Yeah. If you're on this episode, it's been 4 years, even if it's your first episode that your friend just sent you because their story was in it. You're part of it now for 4 years.
And honestly, if you guys did do that, thank you.
Yeah. I like it.
Well, with that, have a good weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us for 4 years.
For 4 years.
Thanks for listening, and as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you. I just ate a fistful of raisins. It was delicious.
That's going to be at the end.
Just ate a fistful of raisins.